Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Candid Conversations about network marketing with me, BK, and over the other end, Dr. Wayne. Hi, Dr. Wayne.
Hi, everyone. Hi, BK. We're looking forward to another great addition to our podcast. So, yes.
Yeah, so it is a mixed media. We do have a podcast version, we have a audio version. The audio version, and we also have a YouTube channel. So those of us who you choose your medium. We are happy to let you see our faces. But if you do not, you just want to use it on an iPod or iPhone, or just listen it to audio. Choose your medium. That's the way it is. So for my usual question, Doc, what are we going to talk about today?
So I thought today we talked last time about emotional direct response marketing and what that actually means. And then there's a few major categories that we can look into within emotional direct response marketing. So the first category then would be lead gen. And then we've got the second category being ascension. How do you take someone from an associate or whatever that baseline is then to the higher ranks? And then the third will be then how to then actually keep people nurtured and how to keep them on board, so to speak. So we'll just dig a little bit deeper into lead generation.
Yeah, sounds great.
Sounds great.
Sounds
Yep.
great. Yeah.
So last time we talked a little bit about all the different, so I think we should go over that again in terms of the general principles of lead gen. So we've got, what generally happens and what happens to me, and I'm sure it happens to yourself, BK, is initially when we come on board within network marketing, there's a lot of angst with family and a lot of angst with friends in terms of why you're going into network marketing. And typically we've got probably three different zones of people. We've got the really enthusiastic who will then basically tell everyone about it. And unfortunately, sometimes that can run amok in terms of family and friends. Then we've got at the other scale, the reserve, the person who just really doesn't say anything because they're too scared to family and friends. And then we've got the one in the middle that will basically then just look at, okay, if something arises whereby my product can actually help a family and friend, then I'll bring it up. So I think that's the first area where people then basically go to. And what we want to now move into a lot more is, okay, where else can we take this? And we then talked last time about then looking at the list of people that may be in your phone. Like generally within a person's phone, there can be over 200 leads and sometimes up to 2,000 people maybe in that phone. And then from there, divide them up into cold, warm and hot, so to speak, and then make the phone calls, etc. However, from there, the other principle then is a lot of people then will go, well, I've done as much as I can within there. Then what you can do then is literally go through the alphabet. Who do I know as my accountant? Who do I know is all the different, you just go A, B, C, D, E, and you just go through and think of people who you may think will benefit from your product.
Yeah.
From there, we can then move into social media, and social media then can be anything from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to, what's the new one called?
TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, TikTok, yeah. That seems to be taking everyone by storm of late.
Yes.
Yes. LinkedIn, of course, is another, and they'd be the major things within social media, I would say, yeah. And then from there, it's then okay. You've still got email marketing, so you can then buy lists, for example, to allow email marketing or even phone calls. Remembering though, and I think this comes back to a number of discussions that we've already had, meaning that everyone's success is determined by what's between here. So if we feel that we can't approach certain people, and if you buy a list, it's going to be even harder for you to make those phone calls. So once again, it comes back to making sure that you're strong in your resolve, you're strong in your why, you're strong in your ability to know the scripts and recite the scripts. And, even if I go back to my first presentations I ever did, I remember basically going through those presentations something like twice a day before I actually had the major talk that I had to give. Of course, as you keep on doing these things, it gets easier and easier and easier. But I remember those early days whereby it literally, if you could wake me up in the middle of the sleep, I could sit up and literally do the presentation. And sometimes that's what it's needed, or I think that's what's needed when we first get on board and we're not sure of who we are. It's kind of like you learn it as rote, but after a while, it then becomes you, and then you can change things, so that's another aspect as well when you're buying lists, or then we can even pay. You can pay social media people to then do Facebook ads, or even LinkedIn or Instagram. You can then even go to Instagram. What are they? Not leaders. What are they called when they're forgotten the word? Within Instagram, you got all the people who have a following. What are they called? They're called.
I can't. I don't quite get what you're trying to lead to there.
Yeah, you're right. So you've got people who have got a huge amount of people.
Influencers.
Influencers. Thank you. And then we can go to influencers and ask and talk to them in terms of talking about your. And I wouldn't say product, but the challenge your product may have. And so this is probably where I'd like to go. So anything else you can think in lead gen there in terms of general principles, in terms of what to do? So we've got word of mouth, we've got social media, email marketing. Anything else I've missed there? There's probably some others that
I think what Doc was trying to explain is, in a nutshell, in our business, one of the key factors that determines the success of the business in our industry is naturally you need to get yourself in front of a warm body to share what you have with them, right? It could be family, and most of us do start with family and friends, obviously, because if you believe in your product and you know what it does, then obviously you want to share with the people closest to you and matter to you, right? But once you have exhausted that list, or you have, for some reason or another, due to personality, like what Dr. Wayne was talking about, you have chosen not to talk to family and friends first, then the next question you need to ask yourself is, how can I get more of these warm bodies to talk to, right? Yeah. And in this day and age, with the internet, I think there's no lack of ability to find warm bodies. So with lead generation, it could be the internet. So let's say we just talk about internet. Then there are basically two approaches we can talk about, which is one is a non-paid version, and the other one is a paid version. And so the paid version means things like advertising, things like buying leads, and things like running Facebook ads and all that. Now, so we kind of think that because this is an audio podcast, we might not be able to go into the technicalities of it. We could point you to various courses that have been done by people. There are plenty of good resources out there, right, Dr. Wayne? For people to learn about this. Yeah. But the general principle about ad buying is you need to understand that you need to do things like tracking and knowing your ROI. And usually the general principle is that when you start to spend on ad spend, is to generate a return for you, and then you plow back the return into generating more returns for you. That would be one of the general principles. And then, of course, another time we could talk about maybe even how to improve the copy, right? Which is part of EDM as well, right, Dr. Wayne? Yeah. So that is the paid version of it, But the other side of it, the other general side of lead generation would be the non-paid version, which would be things like attraction-based marketing. People do things like blog posts, even like TikTok and LinkedIn. If you generate enough content on all these social media platforms, what will happen over time, and the key word here is time. You put in consistent effort and consistent content production, what will happen over time is that a certain group of people will be attracted to you because of the value you're putting out now. But again, you need to understand that that might take a bit of time. So if you are in a rush to make an extra $500 this week, then that may not be the way to go, right? But that should always still be a part of your lead generation principles, because while it's good to be able to spend some ad spend and get leads almost instantaneously, at the same time, you may also want to put out content out there so that you can get back some what we call attraction-based leads. Does that make sense, Doc, to everyone?
Yeah, certainly does. Yeah, certainly does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you then look at your lead generation, especially whether it be to someone that you are paying it for, or whether you are now going online and trying to do it, but it's still cold. Okay, so we'll talk about now it's a cold market you're going to. And when you're looking at most network marketing companies, unfortunately, this is where a lot of people can really get into trouble, because we've got to look at the compliance of those network marketing companies. So from there, what we generally suggest as a principle is don't lead with your product, don't lead with that type of energy, so to speak. Lead with the benefits. It's really important to lead with the benefits. So the benefits might be, if you're in a company with skin cream, it might be how to reduce wrinkles, and you might then put a free report together that then talks about wrinkles, but it's got nothing to do with your product. And of course, in there, you might have 3 other things that you can look at in terms of wrinkles, and one of those things might be your product, okay, in a general principle, okay? So it's really important then to think of how you can add value to your cold list, whether it be a paid version or whether it be a non-paid version, in terms of going into maybe Facebook, going into groups, talking to people, and not extracting them, but just talking to them and doing the right thing within groups, etc. So it's then having something in your mind that then allows you to be curiosity-based marketing, okay, within lead generation, within a cold market. And those people who then want to even go further, you can then actually, if you want to look at certain software, you can then actually get software that you can have lead generation pages whereby they have an opt-in page. So now people will come to your site, and then you basically have a pre-recorded webinar about the benefits, etc., that then leads to maybe an application page where they can come, and then whereby one of the call to actions, the CTA, then is literally making a phone call, for example. And that's another way that you can then build that as well. So I think the terminology today, well, we definitely know the terminology today is funnel building, for example. So people build funnels to allow this to occur. And then, what's your lead magnet? Your lead magnet is that free report that I just spoke about. It could be even just a blog. It doesn't have to be something that is 20 pages long. It could be only just 1 page long. But it's kind of like, what can you do to add value? So if if your network marketing is into juices, what can you do there? If your network marketing is into facial products, or if your network marketing company is into magnets, whatever it may be, what are the benefits, not the product? Really important to understand as well. So.
Yeah, I find that usually because we are in the industry, and sometimes no matter which product, skin cream or whatever product you are in a sense, right? We as a associate, independent associate of the company, we are always so excited about the products that sometimes we just verbally vomit over our friends and prospects, but we forget that a lot of times they have absolutely no idea what some of these magical terms that you have started spouting out in front of them literally means, right? Instead, just a quick, in essence, I think as marketers, we need to start to remember that when we talk to somebody else, they are not at the same place as you are. Focus on more as to what it does, what can it do for them, more than what this product contains or what is it made up of. where was it found, or what is the composition and so on. Because a lot of times we get excited because we understand it, and we know, and we have seen what it can do for us, right? Or the people that we have helped to share it out with, right? But for them, this is the first time, it's like they totally don't get it. So what it does is more important. But I like what Dr. Wayne really talked about just now, which is that when you approach someone for the first time, think about how you can provide value to them. And when you think of it that way, it is much easier to draw somebody to you.
Yeah, certainly. So the thing that is, how can you add value? What are the benefits? Not what the product is. What are the benefits? And then it's always then nice to then go into maybe a case study or a couple of case studies in terms of what the product has done, especially even if you've got brochures or something like that. So think of you then, it's the same type of emotional direct response marketing. Now, if we bring it down into talking to someone, remembering its emotions, which means, as we've kind of chatted about, curiosity based, bringing about curiosity. So bringing an emotional value to your discussion. So that's the emotional side. Direct response is then, okay, now talking about the benefits of that. And then the marketing side, and within is then understand the call to action. And that's where a lot of people then fail, I think, is they'll talk about, even if they get the first two things right, they'll talk about it. They'll even do the testimonials or the case studies really well, and then they'll forget to do the call to action. So it's then having in your mind, what are the call to actions for that person? If they say one might be, no, I'm not interested. So then the response might be, something like, oh, that's cool. I can understand, because you might know too much about the product and that. And, what I'd like to suggest is that please keep the door open. And if you feel that you have this type of a problem that may evolve in the future or happen in the future, please come back to me. Something like that. So, have these types of frameworks in your mind so that when you have a response, you know what you're then going to say, whether it be a positive response or negative response. So when you look at statistics, most people, when you talk to them for the first time, you're only going to get about a 1 to 5% success rate of opening that person's account up on that time. That's rare. And they, marketing, it's usually anywhere between 9 to 14 times you got to get back to people, or especially from a cold list. We're not talking warm or hot or anything like that. We're talking cold. So there's a lot of backwards and forwards, and that's where a lot of people unfortunately lose it as well. They don't keep very good notes in terms of, hey, I contacted this person on this particular day, and this is what I spoke about. And then I need to get back in 3 days or 4 days. Okay, did you do that? And then if they haven't responded, what is your next steps? So have this in your mind, what you are going to do and how you're going to do it, and what sort of spreadsheet or whatever it might be on a phone, whatever you're good at, just try and make bring yourself awareness to that whole process, because names will come in and then they'll just disappear, and that person could have been a really big, good prospect.
Yeah, I think in essence, what just to put it into perspective for myself as well, what Dr. Wayne is trying to say here is that again, I think the caveat here we are talking about is, if whatever you are doing right now is working for you, please continue doing more of that. You don't have to go into some of these terms, that things like CTA, CTR. Some of you may be wondering what this means, right? CTA, of course, call to action, and in fact, some people will be asking, what is a call to action? Basically, it is kind of asking for the sale, right? Asking for or collecting a decision. That's basically what it means. But what we are kind of talking about today is for a group of us who are very, very serious, or are thinking about wanting to be more serious about building this as a business. And then you need to start to look at some of these processes that can be done to help to grow your business, right? Yeah. So, I mean, if you are comfortable with reaching out to strangers on the street and talking to them, and that has been working for you, by all means, you may not even need to consider any of the things that we're talking about. But the rest of us, if you want to scale your business, then some of these things that we're talking about, lead generation, EDMs, then these are the things that can push your business, propel a business from one layer to another level to another level, and so on. Because all of these things can be scaled up. And the things that Dr. Wayne has been saying, that putting in place processes to know, because we all know in marketing that one touch is usually not going to make it, right? Especially when you're talking about cold market, right? So in marketing, we talk about usually to take a person from being a lead and into a customer, it can require anywhere from 7 to 9 to even 14 touches, right? Especially if it's cold. So you need to make sure that if you have spent good money into buying a lead or spending on ad spend, then put in place certain processes of follow-up and multiple touches so that you can literally not bring a person from point A to point B, where B is when they become a customer of yours or maybe even an associate of yours. Right, Dr. Wayne?
Yeah. And what BK was saying there, one of the things that I twigged on was really important to understand within marketing is that sometimes it's only a very small twig, a very small change that will basically take something that is a fantastic concept but ended up failing, and then you just change one word or one color, and all of a sudden it's one of the greatest things you could ever put out there. And I remember one that I was in a room of about 1,000 people, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, if you did X, Y, and Z, it will put more money in your bank account. So that was one of the headlines. The next headline was, all the other words were exactly the same, except it was puts. So if you do X, Y, or Z, this puts more money into your bank account. Now, very small, it's just S. That was the only difference between those two headlines. And then the room basically then had to say, okay, what do you think was the winning headline? And 80%, I think it was 70 to 80% of the room picked the put. Okay, now that headline failed. The puts basically then went to a whole new realm in terms of putting new customer, new leads, and then more people who bought the product. And then when you look at the reason why, puts basically means that the work has been done for you. So whenever you think of copywriting and marketing, think of how can I use words that are going to describe a benefit that allows you to, for the client to feel as if they're getting that benefit and they, what's the best way? They are easily be able to achieve it. Okay, so I've seen colors do incredible things as well, so changing a color from a red to a purple can make huge differences as well. Sometimes red is really important as a color. So I'm not saying red is a bad color. I'm not saying put is a bad word either. It's just depending upon the context and how it's being used in different copywriting and marketing as well. So yeah, it's fascinating. I love this side of it because what normally happens if we don't understand this, we can now think it's our fault. We can now think that now we can go into the blame and that will then actually paralyze people to move forward. But when we understand that all it is something that we've just got to keep working and moving forward. And I like what you said before as well, BK, that, if you do want to, if you've got a good skill set, stay there. What we're also saying is, yes, stay there, but think of these things that we're suggesting, because what will happen, and a lot of people will say to me things like, I don't know how I can bring my network marketing into what I'm doing. I just don't understand that. And what people think of is they think of that as an individual, it's something separate rather than it's a pod. So think of going back to the person now who's doing exceptionally well going out to people. They love going out to people and that. Think of that as a pod that you're doing or something that you're doing that works. And then if you can create a new skill, you're now actually going to take that to another level as well. And remembering one of the podcasts we talked about, or one of the sessions we talked about that the mind doesn't like change. So we can easily stick in this area, but what we might find that if we go over and do this as well, then what happens is it actually propels us to another level as well. So, and think of it like they can be, getting back to what I was talking about before. So, you know, if someone's got a business here, all it is you just bring that business that you already know so well, and you just introduce the network marketing part of it. It's not separate. If you can think of it that way, you can then actually bring about the two in terms of the business, and then bring in network marketing. And then in terms of the person who loves doing the going out into the public and talking, and then doing whatever this new one might be learning more about social media. And I think it was Earl Nightingale who said something like, if you spend half an hour a day learning something new, in a year's time, but you got to keep on learning half an hour every day, you'll be an expert in your field in a year. And most people, and even what I think it was earlier that you said as well, BK, that you have to just keep on doing that, whether it be once a week, once a day, whatever that skill set you want to learn. If you keep on doing that, then you'll build on that, and you will morph into that new you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what is interesting is we touched about this a while back in one of our earlier episodes, that we sometimes forget that when we transition into, or we get into this industry that we all love, we forget that our prior learning, our prior habits, or our prior experience can be very beneficial. All the things that we talk about sometimes sounds common sense, but we kind of forgot about them. And I think that's one of the key highlights that Dr. Wayne was trying to bring across. Again, if we think about when we were, maybe we don't remember, like when we were a baby, we don't stop trying to stand up and walk because we fell down once, right? So it's the same for even today's topic about lead generation and marketing. There is a very important principle that you must all understand, and I think most of us do get it, is that in marketing, it's always about testing. And it could be as simple as putting an S with the word or not with a word. So the difference between using the word put and the difference between using the word puts. And that evokes a different kind of emotion in the person that's reading your copy. So that is something that we all just need to remember and understand. In fact, it's not just our industry. I love to go for films, and because I studied film in my university days. And did you know, most of us may not know this, but did you know that all the major blockbuster movies, they go through what is called trial screenings? They put alternate endings, and then they put it in front of an audience of a couple of people, and then they test out which ending was the preferred ending of a certain movie. And that is the eventual version of the movie that is out in the general public, because that is the one that will do the best. And even very specific things like when a movie is released to the public, they will choose usually the summer days for certain countries, or the Christmas holidays, things like that. Why do these major companies do all these things? Is because they have tested it, and because they know that if I am spending this amount of money making a movie, I would want to get a certain return, right? So just know that all this testing and marketing and that we are talking about, it goes on in any industry, right? In any industry, even in our relationships, I think sometimes we may need to try that as well. When you're trying to get something across to your spouse or your children, if you say it one way, it doesn't work, maybe you need to test using it another way, right? Because if it's important to us, we need to test, right, Dr. Wayne?
Oh, so true, so true. And on that, just leading on from that as well, a lot of people say, I don't know how to sell, Wayne. I really don't know if I can get into this industry because I don't know how to sell. And I say, well, are you married? Yep. I said, well, you've sold yourself really well. You've done really well there. Have you got children? Says, yeah. Well, every day you're selling. It's just we don't think of it as selling. What selling is persuasion. What selling is getting someone motivated to actually be able to see the benefits in what you're actually suggesting so that they will move forward in their life, whether it be your children, your spouse, whether it be a friend, whether it be someone on a cold list that you're basically now going into marketing in Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. It's the same type of thing. It's the same movement forward. And just to finish off, I was exactly the same. Like my background, yes, is in health, but then after around about, I think of the exact years, I'll say somewhere like 5 to 6 years, I can see that normal business skills doesn't really cut the mustard in terms of allowing you to become a very good in business. And then I started learning marketing. So I've probably been marketing for 20 plus years. And then when I got involved with network marketing, I thought it was totally different. And one of the phrases in marketing is people will say, my business is different. You know, I've got a computer store. I'm a hairdresser. I'm a plumber. I'm an accountant. I'm a doctor. And they'll say, it's my business is different than yours. It's, yeah, the business might be different, but the marketing skills are exactly the same. But as soon as I got into network marketing, my marketing brain went out the window, which was really strange. And it took me 2 years in the network marketing industry to then realize network marketing is no different. It is still a marketing. And once you understand these marketing skills, you can take it anywhere at all. So hopefully that's helped. And it's any finishing there, BK, anything you wish to add to that?
I think I totally agree with Dr. Wayne because it cannot be different because in all sense of the word, we are just trying to motivate another human being to take action on something, right? So regardless of what industry you are in, the human being is the common factor. And when you are talking about motivating human beings to take action, then it has to be, in some ways, there will be certain long-standing principles that will always be the same, right? It doesn't matter which industry. So with that, we wrap up another episode of Candid Conversations. I hope that has given you enough ground or enough materials to spur you on to the next level. And I really like what Dr. Wayne was talking about just now. You know, we are either growing, we are always we need to be constantly growing and take ourselves to the next level. And I hope that our episodes like this have been providing you with materials for that. So thank you, Dr. Wayne. We'll see you again next week.
Will do. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, BK.